Welcome to the third video lecture, including introduction in the Marxian economics course. In this lecture, we will talk on the exchange value and the role of money. Exchange value, as you have seen in the previous lecture, is a concept that is very common in the frameworks of earlier economists like Adam Smith and David Ricardo also. Marx has taken this concept and he, to some extent, transformed it. To some extent, there are various similarities, but he has also transformed it. And he put it at the center of the economics framework he has constructed. In this lecture, we will see the way Marx defines and uses exchange value, in very primitive way. Of course, we will see further uses in coming lectures also. In more detail, the most important thing is making you to understand what Marx means with exchange value. And sometimes the initial definition might lead to certain confusions, and that's why I want to make it clear. And also, I would like to make it clear the framework behind the exchange value, especially the philosophical framework behind the exchange value, in what way Marx would define centrality or importance of the exchange value. We will see in a way that when we look to the framework behind the exchange value, and there also we will make some connections to the Marxian philosophy. Most of today's time will be spent on exchange value, but we will also spend the time on the way Marx defines use of money, and also the basic process of buying and selling and how it can be defined in different ways. Basically, he calls the process circulation of value. I mean, from the perspective of an individual, how is value transferred, taken, how is value changing, how the nature of the value is changing when that person is doing the buying and selling process. And we will see an important, let's say, concept in Marx while we are doing that, which is kind of unique to Marx. And that will be the last part of our lecture, when we look to the way the monies and commodities circulate, transfer from one person to another in the economy. So let's start. Well, as a starting point, I haven't mentioned a special name for it, but this is just brief. Briefly, I would like to mention. In Marxian economics, when we are talking on typical capitalist items and services that are being transferred, we are using the word commodity. Well, note that, and that's actually one aspect of Marxian economics that can be also connected to the philosophy. Characteristics of item can change according to the social framework behind the item. So if you take 3 apples, for example, those 3 apples can be physically exactly the same, or probably they will not be exactly the same because there should be some differences, but they can be more or less similar. So it might be safe to assume they are same. But socially, one of them might not be a product, while one of them might be a product but not a commodity, and one of them might be a commodity, a product, and at the same time, I mean the basic name we give to apple which is good. Although whether apple is a good or not, that can be questioned. So, what is a good, and when an apple is good? Apple is a good when it benefits the humanity. If we have an apple at a remote island where no one can travel, then the apple is not a good, because we have a human perspective. We don't have perspective of we don't look. Our perspective doesn't include the other living beings. So if you do that, in that case, apple is not benefiting people. It's not something beneficial. That apple is not something beneficial to the humans. So it is not a good in that sense. It cannot benefit the people because people cannot reach it and take it. A good is something that is beneficial for the people when it is consumed, let's say. An apple can be a bad if it is one way or the other harming people. I don't know if someone has too much apples in that way. They might get rotten, and in that case, they might become a bad, maybe. Apple is only a product if humans grow it. So if apple grows in a wild tree, which happens in the Middle East Technical University Ankara campus, for example, we were gathering apples from there and and eating them. They were a little bit bitter, but not that bad. So if it is produced by the nature, in that case it's not a product. If it is produced by the humans, then it's a product. But if it is produced by the humans but not sold, in that case apple is not a commodity. But if it is sold, it becomes a commodity. And things that are bought and sold in the market, they are commodities. Anything that is bought and sold can be a commodity. In that case, human labor is also a commodity, for example, because we are selling our labor power. If we sell our knowledge also becomes a commodity. So things that are sold and bought become commodities. So in Marxian economics, commodity is used a lot. Good is not used that much. Sometimes product can be used. And we assume most of the commodities are products, actually, things that can be produced by the humans themselves. But if they are things that are produced by the nature, in that case, they may have some anomalies. And we will talk on them also a little bit in this lecture. Let's continue. So what is exchange value? Well, Ricardo defines it: labor time necessary to produce commodities and their inputs. And here inputs doesn't only mean, for example, if we take this pen, it's not only this plastic is not only input. Electricity that is used to produce this pen is also an input. The machines that are used to produce this pen is also an input. The room which they have hired to produce, they might have hired to produce this pen, is also an input, basically. So inputs are calculated beyond actually the material inputs that go directly, physically into the product. In mainstream economics, we don't have exchange value concept anymore. But if you would ask how mainstream economics, or the most common, most of the economists will define exchange value today, they will say marginal utility of the last unit that is bought. In other words, they will say the use, when you buy more and more of the goods and you pay the same price for a good or for a commodity, let's say, each time you make sure that the unit you buy is worth the price you buy, or worth the money you give to that product. So the very last unit you buy is basically, in the very last unit you buy, you might make sure that almost the price you pay is equal to the usefulness, or which is defined as utility in the mainstream economics, you get from the very last unit. And utility, that usefulness that is get from the last unit, is called in the mainstream economics marginal utility. So it is not a bad definition. It makes sense. Although we will see how Marxian economics deals with this concept, the usefulness or the use value. Marxian economics as a school doesn't claim that the definition of mainstream economics is wrong. It rather claims or defines exchange value or the prices from a different angle, and they claim that angle is more critical, more important. That angle is the one we should focus on, at least mainly. I mean, it is more central to the economics. That's the claim. But again, the school, the main economists, major economists in Marxian economic school, and certainly Marx, doesn't claim that the definition made by the mainstream economists today is wrong. Okay. Well, one last thing I should say is maybe this definition is actually kind of solves the water-diamond paradox. We have told last time it was a puzzle why water is so cheap, although it is so useful, but diamond is so expensive, even though it is not that much useful. Well, the mainstream economists will told you, and that's by surface definition certainly right. As a surface definition, surface explanation certainly right. Water is there is so much water existing in the world that the last unit of water that is used is actually not that much useful for the people, and that's why its price is so low, while there is so little diamond for the people who use it. The last usefulness or the use value or the marginal utility of the last unit of diamond that is used is still very high compared with the marginal utility of the last value of the water. Well, we might ask, especially if those two things are can be produced, I mean, people can produce more of them freely, why diamond is produced at a such little amount, which makes its marginal utility remain high, while water is produced at such large amounts, basically. And that's a central question, in my opinion. And that makes the existing of that question and inability to answer that question, in my opinion, makes this explanation a surface level explanation. Not that explanation doesn't go, in my opinion, deep enough. But for many economists, it is perfect enough, sufficient answer. So you might take that position. But that's perfect. Okay. So for the mainstream economists, Ricardo, Smith, and Malthus, exchange value and price are equal to each other. For Marx, however, exchange value and price are not equal to each other. We will see how price is calculated in Price and Profits chapter in 2 weeks. So exchange value is something that is not visible but still a critical parameter variable for Marx, but it's not equal to the price. Okay, we will continue in the next part.